Hi, this is Neil Bradshaw, UberPi, makers of the UberPiSystem, UberPiDisk, and in this video, I'm going to go over peripherals for the system, based on what I have found and what I think would be useful for you to know before you make a purchase, because you have your wired accessories, and then you have your wireless accessories. And your wireless accessories come in the Bluetooth variety, which is actually these right down here, or it comes in the USB 2.4 gigahertz wireless variety, which are these up here. So I'm going to make a run through with my camera on my cell phone and go through all this, and we'll see what you choose. Now, I'll just start with the wired ones. I honestly am a fan of wireless. I don't like a million cords everywhere, but I realize that wired is cheaper and it works. So we'll just get right down to it. So for right here, you have your standard wired USB keyboard. Nothing fancy about it. It's got a USB plug on it. It's just tucked underneath the keyboard right now. And you have your wired USB mouse, generic USB mouse. For both your wired and your wireless, you might find this helpful. It's a 4-port USB hub. Amazon Basic sells them. They're not very expensive. So if you need more than 4 USB ports on your UberPiSystem, or your custom Raspberry Pi with an UberPiDisk, you might actually want to get this. That might be the only wire you really want to hang off of it. As far as controllers go, oh boy, there's a lot. For wired, you got all kinds of choices and they all work. It's just a matter of what your choice is. So we'll just start with the simple and go to the more complicated ones. So right here, you can get these for about $8 for 2 of them on eBay or something like that. You got your classic NES style controller with the USB connection. And then its brethren, the Super Nintendo, made by RetroLink. Also made by RetroLink in the USB style is the Sega Genesis. I like this controller a lot. I'm a big fan of the 3-button, the ABCXYZ configuration. I don't like having to use my fingers on top, especially when I'm doing like fighting games and stuff like that. But if you're a fan of this style, then you choose which one you want. Both made by RetroLink. Both of them work. All of these work. I also really like this controller too. It was actually found by a buddy of mine at Vintage Stock. I don't know how close I can get. That's what the logo says on it when you buy it in the package. And it is a PS3 PC universal USB controller. And the nice thing about it is every single button that RetroPi is going to throw at you for configuration, it has. So it has your joysticks. It has your trigger buttons back here, and your other buttons, your shoulder buttons. It's got them all. So, and then you got this bad boy over here. If you're a joystick type of person, this is kind of what you'd want, but they're not cheap. They're pretty expensive to get something like that, which is why this will probably just be going, a lot of this stuff will go back out on eBay because I just needed it to test peripherals. And make sure when you get the joystick, if you get a USB joystick, that it's an octa-directional joystick, because some of the older games like Miss Pac-Man need to go like in this direction or this direction, and if you can't simultaneously go this way and this way, so if you can't go simultaneously up and over at the same time or down and over at the same time, it makes playing that game really, really hard. So you either have to buy that, or you have to buy a little modifier and get in there with a Dremel tool and modify it, which is not fun. This controller has not been modified. I do have that piece. It was only like $3. So, and then lastly, just to demonstrate, you can hook up classic console controllers. Like this one right here is the Xbox controller. But if you look, it's got an adapter. Ooh, yeah. And then that adapter goes to USB. I'm not the biggest fan of the Xbox controllers on RetroPi. They have issues with like the start and select buttons. But if you like that, you can go for it. You may have to make like this button right here your select button, the toggle, or something like that, or make it your start button, because I've seen where the start button wouldn't work on an Xbox 360 controller that was Bluetooth. It was a USB, had a USB receiver on it, so we had to make the center button, which just isn't a center button on this one, but we had to make the center button an actual start button, and it worked fine after that, but it was kind of a pain in the butt. Moving right along, let's go to what I prefer, and I think everybody really prefers, is wireless. Welcome to the 21st century, people. This is where it's at. Now, I will say this about the wireless. When it comes to your keyboard and your mouse, get the 2.4 gigahertz USB receiver type. So you're going to have a keyboard and a mouse with this one, and both of them are controlled by this, which plugs into your unit. It'll make your life a lot easier. A lot easier. Because Bluetooth only has limited support on the Raspberry Pi. And you need something that's going to work right out the door so that you can boot into whatever you want to boot into. In this case, this is the way to go. So this keyboard's only like $17 on Amazon. Made by Eagle Tech. Definitely the way to go. Another way to go for about $22 is the Re. And my only complaint about it is the mouse isn't super fast. The trackpad isn't super fast. But it works. It works really well. And it's also got a USB receiver. And when you get it, don't freak out, because there's a compartment in the back here. And this compartment in the back is where it's actually held. The receiver's held. So it's not Bluetooth. There's a receiver for it. Now, moving right along, you've got this style of controller, which I really liked at first, but then I really disliked a lot. And I'll tell you why. I liked it a lot because it's got an air mouse. So when you move it around, the cursor on the screen moves. I also liked it a lot because it wasn't very expensive. It also sports a full keyboard on the back. So I was really digging this until I found out that it was jacking with RetroPi, because RetroPi thinks it is a game controller. So if you have two game controllers and then you hook this thing up, then it could become controller number one. And then you've got controller 2 and controller 3 as your controller. And so controller 1 is now a remote control, which is pretty freaking useless in RetroPi. And I found that it also jacks with RetroPi. It would make my other controller configurations kick out. And then I'd have to get another wired controller to reconfigure them, which is not really convenient for everybody. There is a video on the website that shows how to completely reboot your controller configuration, but that's not something you want to do all the time. So if you're a big Kodi user but not a video game user, this might be an option for you. If you can figure out how to make it work, it might work well for you. But for me, I was sold on it at first, but then when it started messing with RetroPi real bad, I said no. But it is a choice out there, so I'm presenting it. These controllers I like a lot, and again, they're of the 2.4 gigahertz wireless USB receiver variety. It's a Baile, B-A-I-L-E. It doesn't really have any markings on it, but all you got to do is keep it on, and you push that home button, and it'll find that receiver, and everything will be peachy after that. And you want to make sure that these wireless controllers are on prior to powering up RetroPi. Now these controllers right here, these right here, I've noticed that if the dongle is plugged in, the little receiver, then it will still see a controller. So if you've already configured it, you're okay. You just have to go into RetroPi, then hit home. It'll find the receiver, and everything's golden. And you can hook two of these up at the same time, no problem. Now, if you're really adventurous, or you got one of these laying around, this little bad boy, which will be going back shortly because I don't have much use for it, is the old PS4 DualShock controller, which I think is absolutely killer. And it's fully functional. The only bad thing is it is Bluetooth. So you have to configure it inside RetroPi. And there's instructions on the website on how to do this. But once you get it going, you just have to remember that before you start up RetroPi, the controller has to be going. And so if you do that, you're fine. And the same case for this. This is the old Xbox One controller. Now the only thing I didn't like about this, it seemed like it was a little easier to configure. Actually, I take that back. It was harder to configure. There was a lot of custom stuff I had to do to get this bad boy going. And even after I got it going, this key right here for the select key didn't want to work. Didn't even recognize it. You pushed it, nothing happened, period. So you end up having to make this push right here your select. And so you don't if you have these laying around and you can live with that, that's great. If you really love this controller, then go for it. That's cool. But if you had to tell me choose one of these Bluetooth controllers, yeah, you look nice, real nice. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. That's your choices. And so for a wired controller, you're looking at anywhere from like that little Nest controller over there. You're looking at like $4 a controller to like $15 for a wired controller like that one right there. Or if you have an old one that's laying around, you can get a USB dongle for it. Your keyboard, you're not looking at much either. USB hub's not very expensive. Your joystick type controllers are going to be more expensive, but that's pretty much your choices for wired. And I have not plugged one device in to RetroPi that does not work. So if you know of any that don't work at all, let me know, because I'd sure like to know. And for your wireless, you're looking at probably, just a couple bucks more for a wireless keyboard and mouse combo. You know, you want a little handheld one, it's going to cost you around $22. If you fancy that remote enough and you really want it in Kodi, I think it was like $13 or something like that. But always remember too, there's an app out there called Yahtzee, and I think it's YATSE. And it can turn your Android phone or your tablet into a remote control for Kodi. So if you want to do that, that's a much better option than using that remote. And so that wireless USB controller that I liked, the Baile one, is it's $20 a piece. So you're looking at a $5 difference not to have to trip over a wire or get USB extension cords. And unfortunately, The PS3 and the the PS4 DualShock and the Xbox 360 controllers, they're up there. They're $50 plus. So you can get them used at GameStop, but they're not cheap. So there you have it. It's your money. It's your UberPi. You do it however you want to do it.